What's up, everybody? William Kirk here with Synth Sounds Of, and today we're going to be focusing on the synth sounds of the man himself, Kevin Parker, also known as Tame Impala. So for today, we're gonna check out 3 key tracks using 3 prominent synthesizers that Kevin Parker has been known to use, one of them being the Juno-106, the other the Sequential Pro-One, and the other the coveted Roland JV-1080. A special shout out to Rock and Roll Vintage and Synth City for providing us with the Juno-106 and the Pro-One. And if you're ever on Reverb, you can check out their store because they got a lot of gear goodies and gear crack. So a little disclaimer before we get deep into things, we just want to say that we're not for sure exactly what keyboards or what sounds he is using, but based on our research, we can gather that some of the keyboards that we're using today are definitely among his gear list. So keep in mind that what we're doing is getting the essence of Tame Impala using as much information and tools as we possibly can to personify the truth of Tame Impala. So to get things started, we're gonna begin with the song from the album Currents, some call Nongs, but if you're from the Midwest like me, you say Nangs. So as we get into the song Nangs, or Nongs, you begins with this woozy synthy sound, which is all over the record, and most notably, he's using the Juno-106, which is his primary axe in the battlefield of synthesizing. The Juno-106 is the third in Roland's Juno line. They were first released in 1984 and were produced until 1988. The 106 was one of the most affordable of the Juno line at that point. Until this day, it's still one of the more approachable of the vintage League of Legends, fetching around $2,000 on Reverb. If you can't afford a real Juno, check out the Korg Minilog or Minilog XD. The XD only has 4 voices but can get into territory like the Juno with its tones and polyphony. There are a whole slew of great VST emulations of the Juno series, like the Arturia June 6V or the IK Multimedia Centronic J60. Lastly, Roland recently released a Juno X, which is a fully digital synth that can reproduce Juno sounds with a whole slew of modern features to go along with it. So on this patch, we have this heavily rhythmic LFO that's being sent through the filter, the VCF, as they say. And next, we have the polarity switch to negative on the envelope, which is giving us that rhythmic modulation that you hear on the track. And it goes without saying that the Juno-106 has a feature that is prominent to its sound, which is the chorus feature. It has a 1 and a 2, and of course the off button if you don't want the chorus, but why even have the Juno-6 if you don't use the chorus? So with that being said, we are definitely going to be immersed in a plethora of chorus with this song and also the other songs that we're gonna play using the Juno-106. So as the song progresses, we're gonna need to turn down the LFO, but turn up the filter just to get more of the clarity of the sound and less of the rhythm. So there is some dancing involved with playing and then writing the fader so that the rhythm component of the LFO goes where you want it to go. But this is definitely one of those things where you're gonna be surfing. Each wave is different. And so you just have to like let the waves take you where the sound wants you to go. So lastly, this song does have some post-production on this sound that treats the LFO with a little bit more color because there's only one LFO on the Juno-106. And to get that warped VHS sound, we definitely have to run it through something. So we are using the shifter plugin on Ableton to get that effect. So as you notice, the sound itself is wide, and it's not a coincidence because yes, we're using the chorus, but also we've added some extra oomph using the stereo plugin Ep28 by Waves, which widens and gives us the full spectrum of stereo cacophony. So next up, we're using one of Kevin's premier sound modules, which is by far one of the most iconic sound modules in all of keyboard history. That's not an understatement. It's the Roland JV-1080. This module here was an institution for me growing up, you know, obviously in the era of the 90s, and 64 voice polyphony, and you can layer up to 16 sounds. And clearly one of the most amazing features that most people don't talk about is the PCM card slot right in the front. Like, if you know what this is, you are aging yourself, because if you had a box of those PCM cards, you know what's up. All right, now I cannot leave without at least playing the 1080 rave demo. This is the demo that set everything in motion for this whole series of Roland gear. Check it out. So as you can see, this thing can do so much. I mean, you can track any genre of music. You could do film scores. You can do breakfast club parties with it, if that's a thing. So on this track, you hear a pulsing string sound that goes in and out, and it gives you this feeling of a string ensemble. Well, guess what? We infer that it might be the 1080 playing a patch known as string ensemble. That is just pure conjecture, so that's what we're using. So for the last part of this song, there's a lead sound that comes in, and it's really cool sounding, Juno-106 signature like lead sound vibe, but we're using the pitch bend to give it that arc that it needs. And the trick is the slider that says DCO, you have to set it a few notches above 0 and just feel it until it's a whole step pitch bend up and a whole step down. So next up, we have this track from the album Lonerism, known as Endors Toi, for those who are fancy. And this track features some flourishing synthesizers at the beginning that establish the full character of this song, which is, driven by a lot of elements of guitar and drums, but the synth sound definitely brings this together. And we're definitely going to be using the Sequential Circuits Pro-One for this example. The Pro-One was released in 1981, and it was Sequential Circuits' only foray into monophonic synthesizers. It's a beast of a synth. It has some really cool modulation options. It has an onboard sequencer and an arpeggiator, which we'll be taking a look at in just a bit. All around, it's one of the most legendary mono synths of all time. If you're looking for something similar but at a lower budget, check out the Moog Messenger or find a used Moog Sub 37 or Sub 25 on Reverb, or Moog if you're a normal person. There are also a handful of VSTs that can get you in the ballpark, like the Arturia Prophet 5, which you can set in unison mode for monophonic sounds, or the Repro 1 from UHE. So this track starts off with some cool guitar, but then the sound of the lead enters, and then you have like this slithery snake-like quality with the lead sound that has a lot of portamento or glide on it. So as you hit a key and then you hit the next key, the sound glides into the next pitch. So the two modes on the Pro-One for the portamento are the normal and the auto. Now, the normal functions just as you would expect a portamento function to function. The auto mode feature is a very awesome feature because you can play one note and then it re-triggers if you play a note after a long period of time, meaning it won't glide down to that note. So with all that being said, We suspect that the first note to the next note of this song is actually in normal mode because it just glides like normal, you know? So there's nothing auto about it. It's definitely a normal glide. Just the standard glide that you would imagine a glide to be in the lifespan of glidingness. So in the standard tradition of having a sound and then treating it later, of course, there are some post-production elements to the sound, which we suspect to be some overdrive, some delay, and some phaser. And to get these effects, we're using some pedals instead of the plugins or some post-production treatment to give it that authentic, in-the-moment effect quality. So for this next sound, we have another Pro-One track that's actually an arpeggiator, but the trick is it's set to up-down mode and there's no tempo sync. So like the good old days, you gotta just fill it out and just ride the wave and just make sure that you don't go too far above the speed limit and not too slow, or else you'll get pulled over for suspicion. So one of the cool things about the arpeggiator mode on the Pro-One is that you can play a chord, latch it by hitting record so that you can get the sequence of the arpeggiator effect. But on top of that, check this out. You can add notes to your cart without subtracting the arpeggio effect that you already have running. And lastly, just to give this sound the authenticity it needs, we've added a flanger effect, but we're going to be using our old friend, the Electro Harmonics Deluxe Electric Mistress. So lastly, we have a track from the 2015 album Currents known as New Person, Same Old Mistakes. What a title. So this track actually features a cool, funky, groovy bass line. This one has a more squelchy, aggressive, funkier tone to it so that it cuts through. So for this bass line, we're actually gonna play one with the filters on, and then we're gonna double it with the filter contour off and the resonance all the way off. So we haven't honestly been using a lot of resonance on a lot of these sounds using the Pro-One, but we are using some resonance. However, the envelope and resonance are very sensitive on this board. So you got to be really delicate on how far you move it. So you just want to nudge it just so slightly until you get the right amount. And of course, in the song, there's this sound that's coming from the Juno-106 that sounds like a harpsichord, and it's a plucky, arpeggiated sort of sound. And it definitely has a unique character, and it falls so subtly in the track. So that's the vibe. It kind of sets the mood for the eeriness and the suspense of what it's like to be a new person making the same old mistakes. So as you can see, the possibilities are endless, especially when you're using a nice family of vintage and cool instruments to give you a unique sound and a unique experience when it comes to creating music. Kevin Parker definitely has a creative mind that spans the universe, and clearly we can't say enough about the Juno-106, the Pro-One, and the JV-1080. And of course, without saying, Tame Impala is a movement and an idea that takes you into the hemisphere in the stratosphere of so many different synth sounds, to the point where you may not ever be able to return back to Earth. So with that being said, I'm William Kirk with Synth Sounds, and please check us out online, check out what we got happening, check out the keyboards that are on there, and the other gear that we have, because Kevin also played other instruments, so why not just get it all?